Imagine waking up one morning with a burning fever. Your body is shaking, your throat feels like sandpaper, every bone in your body aches. You reach for your phone to Google your symptoms. You think about calling a doctor. Maybe you order some medicine online. Now imagine doing all of that, 50,000 years ago. No hospitals, no medicine, no doctors, no surgery, no painkillers, nothing. Just you, your tribe, and whatever the earth around you had to offer. And here's the part that will genuinely shock you. Ancient humans didn't just lie down and die, they fought back. They experimented. They discovered things that we still use today. This is the story of what ancient humans actually did when they got sick, and some of it will change the way you think about medicine forever. Before there were pharmacies, before there were pills, before there was even the concept of medicine, there was the earth, and ancient humans paid very close attention to it. Here is something that scientists discovered that completely changed how we think about early humans. In a cave in Iraq called Shanidar Cave, archaeologists found the burial site of a Neanderthal man who lived over 60,000 years ago. Around his bones, they found traces of pollen from several specific plants: yarrow, groundsel, ephedra, and others. These weren't random plants. Almost every single one of them has proven medicinal properties. This Neanderthal man, 60,000 years ago, was buried with medicine. That means our ancient ancestors weren't randomly grabbing plants and hoping for the best. They were observing, experimenting, remembering what worked, and passing that knowledge down through generations. They were doing science. They just didn't have a word for it yet. Here is one of the most fascinating things researchers have discovered about ancient healing. Our ancestors didn't figure everything out on their own. They watched animals. This field of study is called zoopharmacognosy, and what it reveals is extraordinary. Chimpanzees in Tanzania, when infected with intestinal parasites, seek out a specific bitter plant called aspilia. They swallow the leaves whole without chewing, letting the rough surface scrape parasites off the intestinal walls. They only eat this plant when they are sick, never otherwise. Elephants in Kenya regularly travel miles out of their way to eat the leaves of a specific tree when they are pregnant, a tree that local women also use to induce labor. Bears, before hibernation, eat large amounts of a specific root that kills intestinal worms. Ancient humans saw all of this. They lived alongside these animals every single day. They watched what sick animals ate and what healthy animals avoided, and they took notes. Not on paper, but in memory, in stories, in the knowledge passed from elder to child around the fire every night. The forest wasn't just their home, it was their pharmacy. And the animals were their first teachers. Fever was one of the most terrifying experiences for an ancient human. Your body burns, you shake, you lose your mind in hallucinations. To someone with no understanding of germs or immune systems, it must have looked like possession, like something evil entering the body. But ancient humans figured out how to treat it, even without understanding what it was. Across dozens of ancient cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, one remedy appeared again and again: willow bark. Ancient Egyptians used it, ancient Greeks wrote about it, Native Americans used it, ancient Chinese healers prescribed it, Sumerians recorded it on clay tablets. Willow bark contains a compound called salicin. When your body processes salicin, it converts it into salicylic acid, the exact same active ingredient in aspirin. Think about that. Thousands of years before a single chemist ever existed, ancient humans around the world had independently discovered aspirin, hidden inside the bark of a tree. They didn't know why it worked, they just knew that it did, and they remembered. In the ancient world, getting wounded wasn't just painful, it was a potential death sentence. An infected cut could kill you in days. A broken bone healed wrong could leave you unable to hunt or gather, which in that world meant slow starvation. So ancient humans became surprisingly skilled surgeons. Archaeologists have found human skulls from over 7,000 years ago with perfectly round holes drilled through them, a procedure called trepanation. Most shocking of all, the bones around those holes show signs of healing, meaning the patient survived the surgery. Someone drilled a hole into a person's skull thousands of years ago, and that person lived. For wounds, ancient humans discovered that honey, applied directly, prevented infection and promoted healing. They didn't know about bacteria, but honey is naturally antimicrobial, meaning it kills the microorganisms that cause infection. Modern hospitals still use medical-grade honey on wounds today. In ancient Egypt, moldy bread was pressed onto infected wounds. That mold was a primitive form of penicillin, the same antibiotic that Alexander Fleming officially discovered in 1928. Ancient Egyptians were using a version of it thousands of years before Fleming was born. They didn't have the science, but they had the results. And sometimes results are enough. Pain management might be where ancient humans were most surprisingly advanced. The opium poppy has been cultivated for at least 6,000 years. Ancient Sumerians called it the joy plant. Ancient Egyptians used it to quiet crying children and treat pain. Ancient Greeks used it as a surgical anesthetic. The effects of opium, relief from pain, drowsiness, numbness, were well understood thousands of years before modern medicine gave it a scientific name. In South America, indigenous peoples chewed coca leaves, the plant that cocaine is derived from, for thousands of years, not for recreation, for altitude sickness, hunger suppression, and pain relief during physical labor. When Spanish explorers arrived, they were shocked to see workers chewing leaves and performing extraordinary physical feats without apparent exhaustion. Cannabis was used medicinally in ancient China as far back as 2700 BC. Recorded in the world's oldest known pharmacological reference, the Pen Cao, attributed to Emperor Shen Nong. Ancient humans were self-medicating with some of the most powerful, naturally occurring compounds on Earth. The difference between them and us is not that we discovered these compounds, it's that we isolated them, refined them, and learned to control the dose. In almost every ancient culture ever studied, there was one person whose job it was to heal the sick. They had different names in different cultures: shaman, witch doctor, medicine man, healer. But their role was remarkably consistent across every civilization on every continent. And for a long time, modern science dismissed them as superstitious frauds, people who mixed real plants with magic rituals and fooled uneducated people into thinking they were being healed. But then researchers started looking closer, and what they found was far more interesting. The shamans were doing something that modern medicine is only now beginning to fully understand. They were treating the mind and the body at the same time. A sick person in the ancient world was terrified. Terror raises cortisol, suppresses the immune system, increases pain, and makes recovery harder. The shaman's ritual, as the chanting, the fire, the community gathered around, the sense that something powerful was fighting for you, reduced that terror. It activated what we now call the placebo response. It lowered stress hormones. It made the patient feel safe, and feeling safe, it turns out, has a measurable physical effect on recovery. The immune system works better. Pain reduces, sleep improves. The shaman wasn't just performing. The shaman was doing psychology 50,000 years before the word existed. Here is the truth that most people never hear in school. Modern medicine did not replace ancient medicine. It refined it. Aspirin came from willow bark. Morphine came from opium poppies. Quinine, the malaria treatment that saved millions of lives, came from the bark of the cinchona tree used by indigenous Peruvians for centuries. Digitalis, still used today for heart conditions, came from the foxglove plant used by Welsh herbalists in the 1700s. Penicillin came from mold, something ancient Egyptians were already pressing onto wounds thousands of years ago. A study by the World Health Organization found that roughly 25% of modern pharmaceutical drugs are derived directly from plants that were first used in traditional or ancient medicine. A quarter of everything in your pharmacy, discovered first by people with no laboratories, no microscopes, no chemistry degrees, just time, observation, and a desperate need to keep their people alive. They watched, they tried, they failed, they tried again, they remembered what worked. That is science. That has always been science. The next time you take an aspirin for a headache, somewhere in the history of that small white pill is an ancient human standing by a river, stripping bark from a willow tree and pressing it into someone's hands. The next time a wound heals faster because of antibiotics, somewhere in that story is an Egyptian healer pressing moldy bread onto a cut and watching in amazement as the infection cleared. Ancient humans weren't primitive. They weren't stumbling through the dark. They were doing exactly what we do today, looking at the world around them, asking why things happen, and trying to make people feel better. The tools were different. The instinct was identical. We didn't invent medicine. We inherited it. Drop a comment below. Which fact from this video shocked you the most? I genuinely want to know. And if this changed the way you think about ancient humans, share it, because this story deserves to be heard.